Almost a Woman by Esmeralda Santiago. Esmeralda Santiago came to the United States from Puerto Rico at age 13. She attended junior high school in Brooklyn and the Performing Arts High School in New York City. After the extraordinary years I'm about to tell you about, she graduated from Harvard University and received a Master's of Fine Arts from Sarah Lawrence College. In 1961, Esmeralda and her family came to Brooklyn, New York from Puerto Rico in search of medical treatment for her little brother who almost severed his toes in the chain of his bike. Those who came were Esmeralda, her mom, Mamie, her sister Edna, and her brother Raymond. They met up with Mamie's mother, named Tata, and Tata's brother, Tio Chico. While Mamie went to look for work, Esmeralda and her siblings stayed with their grandmother. Neji couldn't speak English, so her school counselor put her in a class for students who'd scored low on intelligence tests, who were behavior problems, and those who were just waiting to turn 16 so that they could drop out of school. As she walked into class, she could hear other students grunt and mutter, but Neji, as they called her, could not understand a word. She was so nervous she had to focus on the teacher's voice to avoid hearing what she felt were hostile voices that filled every corner of the room. Sometimes, after they had been there and Mamie could afford the airfare, Neji's other 4 brothers and sisters, named Delsa, Norma, Hector, and Alicia. As they picked up her siblings, she noticed just how scared they looked, and she wondered if she looked the same way when she first came to the United States. Neji's father, who stayed back in Puerto Rico, wrote to them and said that he had met and married someone else. It took Mamie a long time to get over Poppy, as they called him, but soon you could tell that she had fallen in love again. She had found another job, she hummed and she sang, and bought herself a new outfit, which she hadn't done since they had arrived in Brooklyn. She finally brought Francisco over to meet us. He lived across the street with his parents. Soon, not long after they had met, Mama's belly started to grow. Francisco, who was the father, was rushed to the emergency room one day, where they found out that he had cancer. Francisco moved in, but because we had so many people living in the little apartment, the landlord said they had to move, and because they moved, Neji had to change schools and go to a new junior high. It was at this school where she took a series of tests that her guidance counselor had given her, and it ended up showing that she had aptitude and potential. They suggested that instead of going to the local vocational high school, she should apply to the Performing Arts High School. Mamie was very skeptical and worried. This was a place they couldn't afford, but she agreed to let Neji try out. Mr. Barone, the guidance counselor, made a huge fuss over Neji, and it made her feel good for once. After lots of practicing and dealing with jealous girls who were bullies, Neji tried out at the Performing Arts School. It was the first time Neji had been outside of Brooklyn since they moved there. She was accepted and would attend the school come fall. As Mamie's belly grew, she got to the point where she couldn't work anymore. Neji had to accompany Mamie, her mama, to the welfare office. Mamie asked for help until the baby was born, and Francisco was out of the hospital. The welfare office asked a ton of questions in which Neji had to translate for her mom. The social worker asked if all of her children were illegitimate. Mamie had Neji explain that their father recognized them all and that he was on their birth certificates. Even when Mamie pulled out the certificates, the social worker ignored them because she wasn't married. A couple of months after Francisco's son was born. He passed away. Mamie lost yet another man. In the summer of 1963, Neji moved again to an apartment above a drugstore on the third floor of a building on busy Pitkin Avenue. Once again, Mamie and Neji had to go visit the welfare office. Neji had gotten better at telling Mamie's story, conveying her frustration of being on a layoff when she really wanted to work. Finally, after weeks of learning, Mamie found a job in Manhattan in a factory. The next fall, Neji started at Performing Arts High School. It was organized by departments: dance, drama, and music. There was a dress code too. Boys could not wear jeans and girls had to wear skirts. Professionalism was very important at the Performing Arts High School. Most of the teachers were working actors, dancers, and musicians. They took themselves seriously as artists and expected all the students to do the same. Neji was going to study drama, and drama students had to also study dance. Neji studied hard, and by her junior year, she was performing in plays and working part-time in theaters, and Yiddish theaters. Mamie had introduced the girls to dancing and took them out to clubs. They did this often to get the girls used to being out in the environment, getting them used to knowing the people, plus it was just plain fun. Mamie met and fell in love with another man named Don Carlos. We moved again, and Don Carlos moved in with them, and Mamie ended up pregnant again. Deep into winter, they ended up moving again, this time to a single-family home. After high school, Neji didn't go right to college. She went out and found part-time work so that she could perform in plays the other part of the time. Neji kept herself so busy that she was rarely home during the day. Between work, performing, and dating, she kept busy. Neji went on to date a Texan, a Jew, an Israeli, and a boy in her neighborhood who was darker than she was. The Jew couldn't take her home to mom because she wasn't a Jew. The Texan was only looking for a mistress. The only one she gave herself to was the Israeli named Olvi. He ended up being the same age as her mother. He treated her very well and with respect, but did not like the fact that she had male friends or the girls that she hung out with. Olvi had to go home to Fort Lauderdale and have surgery for a hernia. That was the only place he could afford to have it done. Olvi asked Neji to come with him, but Neji could not leave her mother to go so far away. Eventually, though, down the road, Neji did leave her mother, but the only way she could do it was by leaving a letter and packing up and just going. Mamie and all her other children moved back to Puerto Rico without Neji. Eventually, Neji went back to Puerto Rico to visit, but she did not recognize where she once called home.